And we're recording. Okay. Let me just make sure I got the copy. There we go. All right. Welcome to Dead Headspace. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and all other major platforms. I'm your host, Patrick R. McDonough, with my co-host, Brennan LaFaro.
Hey, everybody.
And today we're joined by the man behind Crystal Lake Publishing, Joe Mynhardt.
Hi, everyone.
And before we begin, I would just like to remind everybody of the Buzz Book Expo 2020. Readers, book reviewers, podcasters, librarians, booksellers, and lovers of great, scary books. Buzz Book Expo 2020 is just around the corner. Buzz Book Expo is a live streaming event in which publishers will be announcing all the great new horror fiction releases they have to offer through the coming year. There will be interviews, Q&As, presentations, book cover reveals, and more from all your favorite horror publishers, all for free. Spend 2 days immersed in exciting book talk from publishers and authors alike. The event will take place on August 22nd and 23rd. All information, including links to the expo, can be found at Mary Sangi, that is MarySangi.wordpress.com/BuzzBookExpo2020. We hope to see you there. Joe, thanks for joining us today, man.
It's my pleasure.
It's
Really looking forward to it.
6 hours ahead of us, so really appreciate you staying up for us.
Anytime.
Now, I feel like this is going to be an interesting answer. What got you into horror?
I thought about this a lot, and I can't remember a time when I wasn't attracted to it in some way. Since a young age, it's always what I went for. Like even in the library, or back then we only had the library and like a comic book store. So anything that was a bit more to the darker side, and even though I wasn't allowed to always get it, I would read it in the store or sneak out of bed at night to go and watch a bit of TV. And it was always the Nightmare on Elm Street movies and those things that attracted my attention.
Sorry, I thought we were gonna have someone else jump in. Brennan, you want to go?
Yeah. So, Joe, I found this quote from you that really caught my interest. You said horror gives the writer more room than any other genre. I was kind of hoping to hear you elaborate on that thought a little bit.
Well, let's say now you are a romance writer. The only other stuff you can bring in is maybe a bit of adventure, a bit of comedy, and that's it. The moment you go wider than that, you risk losing some of your fans or going away from the recipe that they are so used to. But with horror, I mean, you can bring in everything. Like we recently had a horror book that had a romance subplot, and that one subplot got more attention than the hauntings and the ghosts and everything, because everyone loved that like romance one in the end. And so I mean, there's nothing that I haven't seen in a horror book that wasn't accepted and liked by not only the readers but the author, who was allowed to like widen scope a bit.
Yeah, and I've heard
That's
a
what
lot
I
of
like. So as a reader, it's a lot.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of people basically kind of compare horror to almost like a flavoring rather than just a complete genre of itself. So you see its existence in a ton of other types of things. Like you compared, adding romance into it and then putting in those horror elements. And I think that's one of the big reasons why it is kind of so transcendent, because it really has the ability to reach into multiple genres. Is
Yes,
that something you would agree with?
definitely.
So let's take this to your publishing company. First off, I gotta ask: are you a fan of Friday the 13th?
Yes, of course. Yeah, that's one of the movies I watched a lot as a kid. I can't remember where my parents were, or how I snuck past them, but I always somehow found a way to watch it. And
Did sorry to
even
cut you
today,
off. Go ahead.
even today, it's not, it doesn't interest me as much anymore because I'm looking for more sophisticated horror. But even it's nostalgic when I watch it now because I still remember it as a kid. So always a fan.
Is there one? Did you enjoy the whole series, or is there maybe one or two that you particularly enjoy of the?
The first ones, one, two, maybe three. After that, it lost a lot of the buzz. There was the Freddy versus Jason one that I remember was very popular with my friends as well. So if I just wanted everyone over for the day, that's the one we watched.
That's awesome. Freddy vs. Jason's my favorite. I got a massive poster of it hung in my room. I was just, I don't know, geez, I was probably 13 or 14 at the time.
Same.
So you, Crystal Lake Publishing started in 2012.
Yes.
Was there anything before we dive into that? Was there publishing wise, and if not, writing wise, was there, or even editing wise, was there anything before that that you were involved with?
Yes, in 2008, I started writing, mainly because I always wanted to. Like since a kid, I always saw myself like, because I don't get out a lot. I'm not a massively social person. So I can see myself spending hours a day just working on one thing at home. And eventually, 2008, I started writing because we finally had internet. Like before that, there weren't a lot of opportunities for me to get hold of all the material. So I didn't want to just jump in and start writing without any kind of source material. I studied teaching, so I'm a very analytical person. I want to like work out the steps. How am I going to become a writer? I'm going to do this and this and this and this, which is not the perfect way. But when I was finally able to come online, internet at home, I started taking a few quick courses and joining forums and chatting with other people. And I think in 2009, I sold my first story and then I was hooked. So I just kept writing.
What was that story? Do you remember, or where it was
Yes.
published with?
Um, it was 100-word story that earned me $50, which I mean, now remember I'm in South Africa, so back then it was probably times 12. So all of a sudden I was hooked not just with getting published, but actually getting paid. And it was a story about a father and his daughter who were in a car accident. And if I remember correctly, uh, he drowned and his ghost saved her from drowning. So she was stuck on the beach and everyone was running into the water and can't really remember, but he saved her. So again, there was a lot of emotion in the story. People like that part more than the fact that there was a horror and a ghost. So it showed me what horror can do and
Yeah,
what people like about it.
that's pretty neat, man. So, before Crystal Lake Publishing, did you edit anything as well?
I was part of a writers forum where I think we were about 150 authors, and it was almost like a beta reading group where we would also help edit, and we learned about editing from editing each other's work, and then we even edited each other's edits. So you would learn the art of writing from mainly the authors, but there were a bunch of editors there as well, and you always learn something new from their writing, your own writing, your edits on their writing, and vice versa. So it was very cool, and some contacts and friends along the way as well.
Do you still talk with anyone that you did that with?
Uh, the 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 forum folded a few years ago, but there is a Facebook group, and they started new ones. But the the newer people just want to spam their books. They don't want to learn the craft like we did back then. So
I joined a website when I started writing where that it would be similar. It wasn't as tight knit as yours, but we give each other feedback, and I found that when I started writing, like I had my mindset to actually, hey, want to be a novelist. Uh, the feedback from other writers or whatever, what have you, it, it was so helpful.
Mm.
I would only encourage people to do that.
And it gives you a bit of perspective on how good you really are, because it's easy for some people to think what they are seeing as the best writing ever. Some people, they only see what they want to see. Or on the other spectrum, you don't realize that you are actually talented and you are only comparing yourself to the very best. And that's also not. You have to find the middle ground, and other people's opinion will help you get there.
Sure, and other people that aren't in your close circle would probably help a whole lot. Did
Luckily for me, my friends are not that heavy when it comes to horror, and most of them don't even read. So I didn't have that kind of feedback where people were praising my work or anything, because they hardly even read it. And I don't blame them, because most of them wouldn't be friends with me if they read some of the stuff, some of the early stuff that I wrote. Even my wife doesn't read any of that stuff. Yeah.
you know what? That's funny because like I've heard a lot of writers say my wife's my first. Like for if it's a guy, usually they say that my
Mm.
wife's my first reader,
I
and
have
that's
that as
awesome. That's great. You know, that's not the case for me, and obviously not you. Which I'd like to talk about that because we haven't touched upon this with any guests yet. For writers that listen to the show that they don't have the partner that reads their stuff ever, maybe. Do you have any advice for them? Anything that might be helpful? Maybe not take it so personal.
my wife once, let's say, challenged me to write something different, just to show her that I could actually write. So I wrote it's almost like a love story, with a lot of symbolism of a guy getting old, his wife dying, the tree that they used to, the tree where they met and sat and had picnics, eventually died, and he made a bench out of it and carved a name on it, and it's a whole lifelong story like that. And I think that and that first story that I wrote and sold, I think those are the only two she read, and she loved both of them. Somewhere she either read maybe a bit of the others, or she heard me talking about cool ideas I had, and I think those ideas were like really weird. And she said, "Okay, I'm not going to read that." And that's what it started. No, it doesn't bother me at all.
I think
I'm
that's a good attitude because I mean when I was starting before I wrote I thought I was going to be a filmmaker, director, screenwriter, all that, and I shot YouTube videos, edited them, and there's a lot of friends that are interested in doing that, just like there are a lot of friends that are like, "You're writing a book, that's cool." But when the time comes, push comes to shove, most people aren't going to go through with it, especially if they're not a reader or they're not interested in the craft. And I found out at a young age in my teens and early 20s, don't take it personal, you know?
no at
Know
all.
your audience.
Exactly. Now, my friends are mostly those who do read, Wilbur Smith and nonfiction. That's it. They're not heavy into. I don't think they have the imagination that I have. I don't think they grew up being so dependent on imagination than I had to be. Why, I don't know. Um, my imagination was just a big companion for me since a young age.
Did you ever have a guardian of any sort, maybe your parents or grandparents, or anyone really that was older, that really told you stories? And it doesn't even have to be horror, any kind of oral stories or read your books where you just found yourself fascinated and hypnotized?
My sister, who's 2 years older than me, she read a lot of Stephen King, and I saw the book covers on her shelf always, and that attracted me a lot. I was very interested in the front covers. Even today, I mean, I love a cool book cover. Even uh, movies like DVD covers, board games. I don't know why, because the cover, you can make up your own story. You don't even have to read the inside. It already gets my imagination going. And so I think that was it. But story-wise, I had to make up my own stories.
Brendan, you want to jump in, man?
Yeah. So I mean, if we're moving on from the kind of genesis of creativity, let's say, how does Crystal Lake come about?
What happened was with the writing, I had about 70, 60, 70 short stories published. Now, I only write short stories because, first of all, I had a full-time job and everything, and it was kind of just a hobby. And then I started thinking about doing just a collection of my published stories, because back then KDP was a big thing and everyone was putting out their own books. And I thought, well, I'll just put out a short story collection, like I think it was 40,000 words, and just see what happens. And because I live in South Africa, I had to apply for a tax exemption in America and England and all the big countries, so that Amazon doesn't take another 30%. So they take their normal 30% cut, and if you don't apply, they'll take another one. So I had to give them a name for my publishing company, basically. And that's where my wife and I kept talking about cool names. And we're still talking about who actually came up with the name, because I think we both just looked at each other and said it at the same time, Crystal Lake Publishing, because it has the horror connection, but if you ever want to like go in another direction, it still fits. I mean, it's not like Off With Your Head Publishing or something like that. And so I just gave them the name, put out my own book, and I enjoyed the business side of it so much more than the writing. I mean, writing it's not always easy. It's really frustrating. And the business part was just, I think that's where the genes that I got from my dad comes in, because he's a business guy. And it's just that way of thinking of angling something, marketing something. And so I just took some friends and we said, let's do an anthology. And from there, just kept going. And those who were in the anthology wanted me to do their collections. And eventually that hobby just became something that I wanted to do full time. And a few years later, I did start doing it full time. So now I'm here.
Well, that's super useful too. That whole thing about Amazon taking that extra 30%. I've seen books that I know authors self-published, and they have a what looks like the name of a press on the back, even though I know that that person put it out themselves. And I always kind of wondered why that was, and it's to keep piracy from happening, apparently.
Yeah, I still don't understand it quite, because they say you have to register for the tax exemption as an individual, but you still have to give a company name. They keep telling you don't put there that you are a company, you're an individual. So I just did what they told me to do. Took a 20-minute phone call to America, which cost a lot of money, but it was worth it. So, and you have to spell out every word, from your name to the company name to your address, everything. I remember it was quite funny because you have to spell it out letter by letter.
And here we are, from basically one step above self-publishing to now you've put out over 100 books with Crystal Lake. And I'm sure there's some steps in between. So how did you make that jump from just kind of using it as a platform to put out your own work to pulling in everybody else to what it's become?
I still think, well, okay, I'm a big believer of everything happens for a reason. You can, yeah, let's just stay with that for now. But doing my book was basically my way of just figuring out the details, testing how it's done, because I didn't want to make a mistake with someone else's book. If I screwed up, it's my work. And then I'll try with another book until I'm satisfied with how I'm doing it. And then I would have gone on to other authors. Not that my book was a huge success. There were one or two mistakes that I fixed, learned from, and I think that was August. August, I registered the company. About October, my book came out, and I believe March of 2013, the Anthology came out. So, and the Anthology did well. It was great quality. The authors were very happy, and I believe 6 or 7 of those authors were the first people that I published after that one, even in the same year. But back then I had to do the editing, everything except the cover design. But luckily I was already in a book with a bunch of other guys who used Ben Baldwin. So I just reached out to him, asked some of those guys if they would proofread, just check if I'm doing everything right. Because even back then we were all part of a bunch of people who just helped each other. Like even today, which is very cool because you need that. You can't start everything just on your own and think you know everything. So that's why today when others come to me for help, I do exactly the same thing like others did for me back then.
It's definitely something I've noticed as an outside observer about the horror community is that it doesn't boil down to as much competition as you might think. Everybody else within reason wants to see other people succeed. They want to see new authors get their shot at being published. They want to see new publishers succeed and get that ability to put out more stories. I think that's pretty cool, and it definitely sounds like that happened a bit for you, and you're certainly paying it forward. Crystal Lake does kind of a lot of anthologies. Does that stem from kind of your love of shorter fiction?
Definitely. At the beginning, I thought we were only going to be a short story and anthology publisher, because I love short stories. Really, I love a good novel. I love, especially when you spend a lot of time with it, and it's like the end of a long show. You're going to miss the characters, etc. But short stories, you can have one book with, of course, many stories, and each one takes you on a different journey. And in the end, it does feel like that roller coaster feeling you got from a novel if it's well laid out. And even today, still, my favorite books that I always go to are short story collections from the 80s. And even back 1890 to 1910, if you go look at those authors and some of their short stories, it's the best stuff you'll ever read. But I didn't want to limit the company to just short stories. And in the end, like now, we're open for submissions. We're only taking novels and novellas. And the reason for that is basically the market at the moment. Short story collections sell if the author himself already has a nice following. A lot of readers will not take a chance with a new author's collection. I read one somewhere the other day that with the horror genre, this is the one genre where the fans care more about who the author is than whatever the book is about. If you are hooked on an author, you will read in the horror genre whatever he puts out. With romance, people read new authors every day just because the story sounds interesting. So the novels are doing better there. So we're gonna go in that direction for a bit. And of course, the anthologies are very expensive. I love anthologies. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. But at the moment, with the markets the way they are now, it's very risky. I've had a few anthologies that failed badly, and you will never get that money back. Even if you sell for the next 10 years, you will not earn back. For example, a reprint from Neil Gaiman, I think we paid 20 cents a word on it, 30 cents, I'm not sure. And that was a few years ago. Now, luckily, that anthology was a success, but a few months later, you get a bad one. And if that one's followed by a bad one, then you're in trouble. And with so many small presses closing these days, I started looking at what happened to them, because we talk with each other. The presses, we're always looking at what happened, what could have been done. Sometimes we help. Sometimes when the authors come to us with the reprints, and we ask them what happened. So I looked at all the potholes, and I made sure that Crystal Lake doesn't fall into one of them. So I'm a bit safer these days. Because if I lose this, I lose everything. I mean, I quit my day job of teaching. I can probably go back, but I'll never get the same. I'll have to work for like a school instead of the government, for instance. So pension and that stuff's out. Yeah, that's it.
You don't want to throw yourself into a school these days.
Oh, I'll never go back.
Yeah.
I taught for, I think, 12 years. And the last 2 years almost killed me. Okay, mainly because I was doing two jobs. I mean, I went to school, then it's sport, and then you come back and you have to put on a different hat, and now you have to work. And you have to write, and you have to publish, and you have to be creative, and you have to think ahead, and you have to market the previous books, and so on and so on, and learn. I had to learn a lot back then, a lot of research, lots of reading, lots of non-fiction, lots of case studies. And in between, you need a life, and you need to give your wife and your family some attention. Luckily, I didn't have a kid back then, because I don't think I would have been able. Even now, I'm struggling with just the amount of things that need to be done and how little time you have. And that's why I sound like this. Yeah.
I'm gonna be paraphrasing this, so it's definitely not a quote. But Joe, you said something. It might have been 2 or 3 years ago. I don't remember where it was, but you said something along the lines of basically don't focus on writing so much that you lose your family. That stuck with me. Like you've personally, I'm not kissing your ass, but you've personally been a huge help with me. I joined the writing community in 2013, 2014. You're the only guy to date that's published me, which I'm thankful for. And
That's cool.
just listen to you talk through Facebook or Twitter, our communications, our conversations about family, about books. You've been very helpful. So I would encourage anyone to kind of follow you on any
Oh,
platform that you
thanks.
use.
I'm glad I
Yes.
could help in some way. Yeah, I have to say, for me personally, I'm a big fan of balance. Um, I keep saying this, but I'm still struggling to find it myself. I have worked too hard and pushed too hard at times, but it's because I knew where this was headed. Like I had a plan, I knew how to get there, and I knew it's going to be a hell of a lot of work, and I had to get it done before we had a kid. And it's not where I want it yet, but I can't work as hard anymore now as I could like 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, I could work easily. I mean, still last year, the year before, when our kid wasn't born yet, I'd work 16 hours a day straight. Like sleep work. That's all you did. And weekends you went and just reminded everyone you're still alive. Now, when I try that for 2 days in a row, I get sick. So, because you've got night feedings and the kid gets sick, and yeah. So, and I mean, I am over 40 now, so I don't think I'm going to try working till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning anymore. I tried last year and it really did not work, because the next day you're so buzzed that you're not going to be your best anyway. You're not going to work as fast as you would have worked, so it's not worth it. Rather get decent sleep, have a bit of a social life, hang out with your family, and the time that you do work, you'll be more energized and focused. And when you stop working, you'll be excited about getting back to work, even if it's the next day. But if you are so tired when you are done there, the next day looks like this massive mountain that needs to be climbed. So that is not a way that's going to work for very long. Maybe when you're still young, 20s
I,
or something.
I agree with that totally. You have to have that balance. You can't just, and I would say I would leave it at you can't just work yourself into oblivion, but you do have to take into account, family stuff and hobby stuff. Like you have to really spread. Oh, and sleep, that's good too. You have to spread it out, or you just get like too thin too fast, and then
Yeah,
you're useless anyway. So.
exactly. For me, I'm very sad that I gave up some of my hobbies to make time. And not that I have time yet, but eventually when I have, it's gonna suck that I didn't stick to something. I mean, you need to clear your mind sometimes. There was a time where even reading was too much like work for me. Now I'm out of the habit of taking a book and reading for like an hour straight. I'll read 10 minutes and then I'll put the book down and I want to jump onto another project and work. But I'll get over that. It's just my reading brain has to just get some exercise and just to distract me, something that pulls me away from work just for a bit. Um, I even sold my PlayStation a few years ago, which was now with the lockdown and stuff. I'm really sad that I did because that would have been nice. But I played a bit of guitar, and which I still have. So maybe when the kid is a bit older, I'll show her a few things on the guitar and maybe just pick that up a bit. But um, one of the bad things that also happens when you overwork, especially when you're sitting and with the keyboard, is sitting is unhealthy, of course. And so I've messed up my back a bit. I've messed up my wrists. So there goes the guitar playing probably. So yeah, I think I should have at a younger age started listening to myself and just taken better care of myself. I won't change anything now because you never know what would have happened, but I'll definitely be a bit more cautious going forward. Definitely.
It's definitely smart advice. I'd like to jump to one anthology, your Shallow Waters anthology. It's an interesting one to me because I don't know of too many flash fiction ones. Maybe there's a lot more than I realize, but I recall you saying that you just have a real love for flash fiction, which is why it came about.
And when I started writing, it was flash fiction. We had these weekly flash fiction challenges, competitions, always 100 words, and it really teaches you about making every word count, and which is a bit difficult when you eventually make the jump to novels, because now all of a sudden, and I mean, I did try a few things. Anything over 10,000 words, it just felt unnatural to me because now you have to basically stretch it out. And that's why when novellas started picking up a bit of interest, because I remember a few years ago, authors could not sell novellas anyway. And now that's changing because it has the impact, or it has the story of a novel, but there's none of that excess fat. It's just straight into the story. You can read it in one or two sittings. And I'm glad it's becoming more popular because I love novellas. But flash fiction, that's where it started for me. Because it's about the idea and making it fit into that short space. So it's a bit difficult with anthologies because, I mean, you can get a lot of flash fiction in there. That's why the Shallow Waters is just ebook anthologies. Maybe one day we'll do like a best of the first 20 volumes or something, and we put that in a paperback. Everyone gets paid a decent amount of money, and we'll see. We'll get there. I'll try and do 2 more volumes before the end of the year.
I guess I lost count. What volume are you? What was the last one you published?
There are 5 now.
Okay.
And I've got enough stories for 2, almost 3. But the problem is it's not that the editing takes a long time. It's that there are always other books that need to be worked on before I can work on anything that is just me being the editor. So I always put other people's work as being more important. So this is always there on my laptop beside the bed for when I have like 10 minutes at the end of the day just to edit like one story. And then 2 weeks later, I'll edit another one. So it takes a while before I can get 20,000 words worth of flash fiction.
I mean, they seem like they're pretty popular.
Oh.
The reception's been pretty good from what I've seen.
Definitely. No, that was a good move, business-wise, and just meeting new authors like you now and seeing new talent and knowing who to keep an eye on. And now that we have the open submissions, when people send in books, I recognize the names and I go check, oh, this is that person who wrote that story, which I really loved. And I'm not saying it's going to sway my choices, but it does make me give a bit more attention to those books to see if, even if I put in a bit more work, or can this turn into something, or do I see the vision that the author has because I know a bit about the author. And I mean, it's always good for an author to somehow get onto the radar of a publisher. So people who enter these competitions and the ones who win it, and even just the people who vote and then say why they like the stuff. I've got a horrible memory, but for some reason, when it comes to this, maybe because it's work related, I remember the names and I remember the stories. That's the thing. I have a bad memory unless I can connect it to a story. So even if I told I think my mom the other day, things I remember from years ago, there has to be a story connected to it.
Interesting.
Even if it's just furniture you buy somewhere, if something funny happened that day, I'll remember it.
Do you have any more advice for any newer or aspiring writers, or even perhaps someone that wants to be a publisher?
Sure. Research is very important. I think people are in a bit of a hurry these days. You have to be, because there's a lot of competition, and I mean, time is limited. But do it in such a way that you have, let's say, a third of your time goes into research, and then I think some people say don't spend more than like 1 hour a day on social media, spend more time writing than social media. I have to spend a lot of time on social media. I spend 2 or 3 hours a day just answering emails, so that's a nightmare. But you have to find the balance. But research, I mean, even now I have to look at what's on the market, what's happening, who's publishing what are they writing about, what new social media platforms are there, what new tools and apps and whatever else, which is not a lot of fun. But if I don't stay up to date in some way, well, where am I going to be in 10 years? So, research.
Which leads me to, I guess, the next question I had. Where's it gone, publishing wise? Where has it gone from when you started to where it is now? So 2012 to 2020.
Uh, People are a bit more, I'm not going to say scared, but they have to make sure what they are writing is accepted in the world today. Like, was it a few weeks ago where the one lady pulled a book a few days before publication because someone asked her, who gave her the right to represent this culture or race or something. So that's a tricky part now. I mean, back then you did not get editors whose job it was to see if you are offending someone. Now you get, I think they call them sensitivity editors or something. I could be wrong, where that's all they do. They make sure that no one gets offended. Now, in the horror genre, I also don't want to offend anyone, but I'm not going to let a good story be influenced by who are we going to offend. But some books, I mean, I've read a few submissions where I was like, yo, this person's looking for trouble. But we don't want to shy away from sensitive subjects. We want to take it head on. I mean, it's in fiction that people learn about other cultures and empathy and being in someone else's shoes. I mean, we have male writers writing from female perspective in Stephen King's first book, and vice versa, which is a good thing, because for the first time you are actually in that person's shoes. But again, research, you can't just make up stuff, because that's where you're going to get caught out. You're going to rely on incorrect experience from your own life that you think, now this is how it works because that's what you experienced, but that's just not what everyone has experienced. So I think that's about it. And of course, the novellas that are a bit more popular now, thank goodness. Short stories, not so much anymore, unless it's an author that they always go back to. So for me, for instance, John Connolly writes amazing short stories, really. And of course, Stephen King's his older stories. And I'll read anything short that he puts out. Novels, not so much because I don't have the time for those big books. I think that's about it. I'll probably have a nicer answer later tomorrow.
I think your point though about writing from different points of view and perspectives, I think that actually ties in really nicely to your very first point in that answer of using a lot of time to conduct research. If you're going to write from a point of view that's not yours, look into it so you don't look like a jackass, or write like a jackass or act like any one of those really. So when you are looking at manuscripts that come in, what do you look for in them, in something that you want to publish?
Um, First of all, and this is the reason why I asked for the synopsis, the author's resume, and then of course the first 3 chapters, is I look at all 3 of them, and it's almost like reading a short story, not expecting anything. So I just start reading it, and something along the way pulls you in. You're not always sure what it is, and by the time the story is done, for the next 10 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe even the rest of the day, that's all you think about was that story. It stays with you. If you're really lucky, you might even dream about it that night. And I read about 3 of these submissions every day. I don't want to go through them too fast because I want them to almost, let's say, speak to me, where there's just something about it. And if I have that curiosity of like, yes, this thing keeps nagging me, then I'll ask the author for the rest. And then I'll get I have a few slush readers helping me out, and then I'll get their opinion. And if they have the same feeling I have, or they just say this is really good, and I'll of course look at the writing first, because sometimes you have these amazing story ideas, but the writer is just not on that level yet where they can pull it off. But if I hear good things from those readers as well, then when I'm done with all of these submissions, I'll read those books full out. But so far, we've had 2 books that were just from the start. The great story ideas, original twists to it, amazing writing, and even the possibilities of how to market it excite me. Like it's going to be really cool releasing these books. So we already signed 2 of those books within the first. Okay, submissions close in 3 days, but I want at least 10, but I think I'm going to end up with more than 10 books, which is just going to be more work for me, but that's fine.
You don't mind taking on the extra work? Balance, come on.
I'll try, and that's what I always do. Like I'll say, yeah, fine, I'll do it, and do it. And if you say yes to like 10 or 20 different small things, before you know it, you've got like more work. You've got enough extra work to like hire a whole new person to do it. But I'll have to space them out. So I think I'll accept the books that I really want first, and then I'll probably tell 2 or 3 authors, listen, I want to publish your book, but it's not going to be next year. It's going to be like early 2022 or something. If they agree with that, or maybe I need to pay in advance, I hope not. But if it's a book I want, then I'll make them an offer.
From a publisher perspective, how do you feel about taking on books that are the first in a series, whether it's a trilogy, whether there's just 2, or whether there's a lot more than 3?
At the moment, I am looking at one submission that is along those lines. As long as the first book can be a standalone, that's fine, because then we can see how that book does. And if it sells well and we get good reviews and people are asking for like, it ended this way, can there be another one? Will there be another one? I listen to the readers. That's it. And if they agree, then we'll do another one. I've done sequels where the first one didn't sell well, but the readers who did like it are hardcore fans, and they are fans and followers of Crystal Lake, so I listen to them. So sometimes I make calls based on finances. Sometimes it's just, if it's a cool story, I'll go with it, even if I know it's not going to be the best seller ever, because I believe in the author and the book, and it's something I enjoyed.
So that's interesting. Let's go back to, you talked about Neil Gaiman's story that you bought the rights for, one of your anthologies. You've also published a few other big names like Ramsey Campbell and Clive Barker. How did that feel? Like those had to
Oh,
be guys that were on your bucket list.
definitely. No, that's the one thing where you say about the horror community helping each other, and I received a lot of help in the early days. The biggest help I got was one contact giving me information for another contact, and that contact opening other doors to more of his friends or her friends and more authors. Because now you can say, listen, this guy told me to email you, or I got your email from this guy, sorry to bother you, would you be interested? And because Crystal Lake was still a young company, I could get away with not having to pay a lot because these guys all want to help. Not that I took advantage of that. I asked them straight, listen, I told them, this is what's happening. We started back then. What, like, do you have reprints? Can we do a quick interview? And a lot of them ended up like giving more or longer stories, or yeah, it just rolled from there. And a lot of those guys saw that I was honest and sincere from the start, and very open. I told them everything. I didn't hide anything. Paid where I could, and a lot of them realized that, and we are still in contact today. A lot of them became friends. Some of them I ended up publishing their books, because if my goal was to, let's say, make money from that first book, I would have lost them immediately after that book, and there wouldn't have been that relationship, and that relationship then opened more doors and more doors, and so it just went on. And with some of those books, I mean, uh, I got a lot of contacts that did not pan out. Like, I had a lot of guys say we're going to chat with this guy and that guy, and we did. But I mean, the bigger the name, the bigger the person, the less time they have. So a lot of these guys said like, "Oh, thank you for emailing. Wish I could help, but I'm very busy." Especially the movie guys. I suck at names, so I won't even recall all the names. But these are the people that I idolized as a youngster and grew up. So a lot of them I got to work with, especially with the non-fiction books, with the authors. So I'm very, very happy for that, and hopefully I can help other people as well. So sometimes I share a contact, but you definitely need permission from that person first, because they do not hand out their contact info very easily.
Yeah, I imagine
Understandably.
so.
Yeah.
One of those nonfiction people that you looked up to, I imagine, would be Wes Craven.
Mm. Yeah, that was a big one.
You got to interview him a little bit before he passed away. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Um, I was a big fan of what was it, Swamp Thing. So we had a nice chat about that movie, because I was very young then. I think that's one of the movies where I had to snuck out of my room to go and watch. And even today, if it's on, I'm going to watch it just for that bit of nostalgia. And so I had a lot of questions for him about the movies, and his like what his vision and what he ended up having. And it was one of the authors, and I can't remember the name now, but he said, "No, you can get me the contact info. Uh, Most likely nothing's going to happen, but we can do an interview." And sent the email, and it was within the hour. The same with Jack Ketchum. Like, some of these guys, doesn't matter how busy they are. Ramsey Campbell, they answer within the hour, and they'll tell you straight yes, no, whatever. And I found out later that Wes Craven he was already in pain. He was already a bit confused and stuff, because I believe it was brain cancer.
Mm.
And even towards the end, he was very helpful, and he wanted to help. With Stan Lee last year, 2 years ago, just before he died, let's say let's say 7 or 8 months before he passed away. Another contact, also, he worked with Stan Lee on the Spider-Man comics, and he said, well, he was just like a staff writer back then, but he can get in touch with these people for an interview. I think it was for It's Alive or one of those non-fiction books. And he said that he'd love to help, but I mean, he could hardly even see anymore by then. So we knew that he was quite unwell towards the end. So I had this bad suspicion that something was going to happen because he really wanted to help, but yeah, it's not always possible. And I think a lot of these guys, they've got a few more projects they want to get out before they run out of time. So they need to concentrate on those things. Can't blame them. I'd probably do the same. So it's always a bad thought knowing that one day you're going to be busy with a project and it's not going to be finished, or you're going to be busy with a book and you're never going to get to the end.
Yeah, I hear that.
It sucks. Yes.
I think there's so many different ways to look at that too, and it all comes back to balance. You know, the reason you end up working at 2, 3 in the morning is because you're thinking, you know, I've got to get this done. I've got to get that done. I want to accomplish this. I'm looking at my bookshelves. I'm never going to read all that stuff before I, you know, add to the mountain or, you know, kick it. But so, I mean, that's a very complete list. It's a very big list of really cool people you've worked with. Are there any other names you would throw out, people you'd like to work with that you just haven't had the chance to yet?
There was who's the author who wrote Boy's Life? Robert McCannon.
Robert,
right?
yeah, yep.
I'd love to work with him on something. There was a contact once that reached out to him, also very busy. And he's not writing that much horror these days. Or some of the guys, when you chat with them, they don't write short stories or essays anymore. They just write novels. Why? Because that's where the money is. And again, you can't blame them. Some authors have retired from short stories just to write novels. Stephen King, we could only get reprints and stuff, and even then you have to buy it from whoever the rights holder is at that time, and it's normally another publishing company, and they ask unbelievable amounts of money, a lot more than Stephen King would ask, because most of the time when you deal with him directly, he does not ask a lot or anything at all. He's also one of those guys who wants to help out where he can, but to get to that inner circle it's almost impossible.
And you said that you worked with Jack Ketchum. I actually didn't know that. What?
Yes, he was in Tales from the Lake Volume 2 and some of the non-fiction books.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a nice guy. I never met him in person, but you can quickly see just from someone's emails and the way they greet and say goodbye, and just how they treat you and respond to you. And then you see online how other people talk about him, especially after conventions. And when I watch like the Stoker Awards online, you see how people just respond to his praise and stuff like that, and that it doesn't go to his head at all. And that's a nice thing. A lot of these guys, they don't think they're a big deal. I mean, even the biggest authors, they all have that imposter syndrome where like they don't really feel like they belong there. I think it's normal for authors to be in a situation and feel like you don't belong there. I get that a lot.
I've only heard good things about Dallas, Jack Ketchum.
Yeah, Dallas, shame. Sorry, when I had to email him, I always had to think, what was his name? What's his name again? Dallas.
Dallas Mayer. How do you pronounce his last name?
Yeah,
I think it's Mayer.
Mayr.
YR.
So before we move on to, Brent's got some good questions, but I just wanted to cover I don't know if you guys have an official title or name. The network of publishers. I think there's like 100 of them that you're a part of.
Yeah, we just said a coalition of publishers or something like that. So we basically, coalition is more like a short-term thing. So whenever we need everyone, we all step up. But there is a secret Facebook group, and everyone is on there. I've got everyone's email, so if something big happens, like a press closes down, I email everyone and say, like, let's meet up in the group and see where we can help out or fix a problem or whatever. Because when a press closes down, if they handle it incorrectly, it looks bad on the rest of us. I mean, you'll get a lot of Facebook chats where people are saying about, yeah, the small presses are cheating the authors and stealing and so on. So we just want to make sure that's not the impression everyone gets.
That's definitely a service that is invaluable.
Absolutely. All right, so
Well,
Joe, I was Googling a little bit about you before we did this, as one does, and I just kept coming across this picture of you posing with a cheetah, and I need to know more about that.
oh, shame that cheetah passed away last year from cancer, believe it or not. That was bad. Now it's local people here. I was still teaching back then, and one of the female teachers, she worked at this cheetah resort, cheetah wildlife sanctuary, I believe it is. And they've got like 10 cheetahs and a panther and so on. But you never know when you about these places. You want to go and check for yourself. So we went there that day to make sure, because you could, I think it was for a charity book we did. I wanted to give some money to them to basically like help feed a cheetah for a year or something like that. So my wife and I went there. We went to check it out, and that specific one was tame. It actually sleeps on the bed with the owner. It's like just one big cat. So it walks around and rubs up against you and stuff. But when we took that photo, I was actually very scared because that one, if you ever heard a cat purr, just multiply that sound by like 100, and you could hear like basically the heartbeat of that cat, and you're like, is this cat gonna jump me now or something? So that was very scary, but also exciting, and it's just weird to see them out of a cage just walking around like that. It was quite the experience.
Real quick, I gotta ask, have you seen that documentary Tiger King?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. This is not one of those places at all, like where it's about making money. I don't even think they charge people. If you want to help or feed one for a year, they have these not. It's like a adopt a cat type program, stuff like that. And then schools can take kids there and go look at the panthers and so on, because we don't have a lot of that in this area. We do have a lot of farmers who have tiger cages and stuff. That's where some of the abuse happens. But these places are much safer. And because South Africa is such a big farming area, the cats that are in the wild, they get shot by the farmers to protect the sheep and all that stuff. So it's actually better for them in these types of places, unless sometimes they can get taken to the nature reserve parks or even a bit up in Africa where there's a lot more of these places for them. Safer places where there's still a bit of jungle left. No,
Now,
not here.
forgive my poor grasp on geography, but are animals like cheetahs, are they common down in South Africa, or are they more north in Africa?
No, I think they're more in the bottom. They like the veld, the grass, because they can hide quite well. I'm not an expert at all, so but there are a lot of these climates, the savannas or whatever you want to call it, where you get the same one you get here, you'll get like a bit higher up there, and then like South Africa is not even a big place, but if you go from the left to the right, you'll find like 5 or 6 different climates with whatever plantation plants and animals go with that. On the left side, it's almost like desert area. On the right side, you've got subtropical palm trees and banana trees and stuff. So, which is weird because it's really a very small country. You can drive straight through in like one day, most likely.
Mm.
Not that I've ever tried, but yeah. It's not like America. I know a road trip over there can take you days. I always laughed at people going on road trips for like 3 or 4 days, and over here we moan when we have to drive for like 8 hours somewhere. It's no one wants to do a longer than 8-hour drive.
I'm in that boat too. I don't want to go far.
Mm.
Speaking of being relegated to one area and not going far, how has quarantine been in South Africa?
We were on like strict lockdown for I think 3 weeks back in March, April, and okay, we're doing it in levels. I think we're on level 3 now. So level 3 means you can go to the shop, you can go to work, but you cannot visit friends or family. I know for a fact we're not allowed to visit family yet. So now everyone's complaining that if for instance, the taxi drivers are not following the rules where they're supposed to only be like half full, 3/4 full, but they were. There was a big protest and everything, so now they're getting away with it. So the joke is, if you see your neighbor's son visiting her, you have to phone the police. But if you see an overloaded taxi, the police are going to laugh at you or something like that. So there's a lot of court cases, a lot of people not happy with how things are. Schools shut down now again. They were open, now they closed again for another 2 to 3 weeks because we're in our peak now. So most of the time we're still at home, which sucks. And my wife was working 2 weeks ago, and the guy that was on duty with her, he tested positive. So there was a big scare because he was in contact with a lot of the children at the school and other teachers. And luckily nothing happened there. But 2 or 3 weeks later, he was already tested and locked down. Then a kid got sick, and then the hostel kid got sick, and then everything just started closing down. Now political parties are taking on the government because they want the schools open again. So it's a big mess. But I think every country in the world, no one really knows how to respond to this. I mean, there's no guidebook or anything. So I think there's 1 or 2 countries in the world that the citizens aren't complaining about how it's being handled. So.
Mm. That's to me that's just wild that you're halfway across the world from Patrick and I mean there's just so many parallels in what you're saying to what's going on here. So now as far as publishing and everything, does being locked down impact you at all, or is it business as usual?
For me, it's business as usual, actually more work. But at the beginning, there was, I think in the end of February and March, there was a big drop in just basically sales overall. Everyone was a bit unsure. Everyone was, I think, hanging on to their money and stuff. And then in March, everything just went back to normal. We've had some of our best months so far this year, which is strange. America especially went quiet for a while regarding sales, but I went on. A lot of publishers said they're going to stop publishing books for a few months, especially paperbacks, because shipping and warehousing and that stuff is a bit of a problem. I mean, for me to order one book now from the Ingram printers can take up to 22 days just to print. And when shipping in America is also a bit of a nightmare at the moment. So let's say you're going to wait a month. But if you print it through Amazon, the longest we've waited was 10 days, even though they say it can take a lot longer.
Yeah.
So I think it basically just comes down to it's going to be difficult to set up an event, but you can't set up an event anyway. So if everything's done online, no one's complained so far, although I've heard of one person who ordered a book that never arrived. So Amazon sent another one. So they took it on as it was their mistake, something went wrong there. But otherwise, we haven't had any issues. So I went on. I think because there was less competition, less new books being published, those books maybe did better. But I haven't seen any negative impact otherwise when it comes to publishing. So it feels a bit bad some days chatting about books and the authors behind the scenes and how everything that went in the book, while the rest of the world, it looks like it's burning down. It feels bad being business as usual when everyone is anxious and scared and everything. But I mean, my wife might not have a job in a few months. She might not get paid in a few months. We have no idea. So I have to keep going. That's it.
But that's just it, is you have to keep going, because I'll tell you what, Joe, I have lost myself in more than a couple books in the last 5 months
Oh,
trying to just, push off
ex-
that, am I going to have a job in September? Am I, all the uncertainty that's out there. So, I mean, I totally see where you're coming from, and I agree that it feels a little bit weird in these end times to be talking about books and authors and stuff like that, but
especially horror books.
it keeps me sane,
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Now, I think that's also why I want to just make a bit more time during the day for myself, just to read again, because I also have to escape, and without seeing the business side of, I mean, reading. I just want to lose myself in a nice story and be excited about going to bed tomorrow night to read a bit more. So I definitely want to go back to that. But I think everyone needs it. And even the writers, I mean, you can't abandon them now and say, sorry, nothing's going to happen publishing wise for the next few months. It's like the athletes out there. I mean, those guys, even though they are practicing, they're not competing at a professional level. So there's going to be ring rust when they eventually get back. Now, authors, they can keep writing, but if they're not writing for to be published, or they're not working on their own campaign, I mean, every author these days has to market themselves. You are the product almost more than your book is the product. So you have to just keep going. You can't just say, okay, pause on that part of my life for the next year. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. The readers keep reading.
That's true. Are you seeing an influx, or perhaps not? That's not the right word. Are you seeing more submissions with apocalyptic themes?
No, I've heard a few readers say they are not interested in that at the moment, although some say it doesn't bother them. Um, it doesn't bother me. I quite like it. When we had that flash theme for last month with post-apocalyptic, it was a bit of a risk. I thought, man, am I going to get entries? And it was actually we didn't get as many, but the stories that came out of there, even the readers who on Patreon who voted in the end said those were some of the best entries they've read for like the last 6 or 7 months. They were amazing stories that came out of that. So I don't think people should shy away from it, but I mean, it's the reader's choice if they want that kind of thing right now. I think some people, it looks too much like like you say, the end times out there, and the end of a horror book, or the inciting incident of something that's like worse to come. But
Definitely.
I think, I mean, everything ends, everything changes in the end. So
Yeah,
that's why you have to keep planning as if you're just gonna have new problems next year. So
that's true. We don't know what's around the corner. Like if whenever a vaccine comes out, there's probably a few hundred other plagues that could kill us.
the vaccine alone is going to be a problem because not everyone wants to take it. So it's going to
That's
be there, and then you're going to have new problems, and then someone's going to get sick from the vaccine, and then there's going to be new problems because they're going to blame everyone. So there's
yeah.
always
Our species will forever be at war with each other over everything.
The
exactly.
apocalypse is definitely slower than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's a bit boring some
It's
days.
really
Yeah.
crawling, yeah. I thought, maybe knock it out in like a week or two, but no, this is really dragging on at this point.
Are there a lot of slow days for you, Joe?
I I wish there were more slow days, really. That's, I wish I could I mean, just for me to say I'm going to take 4 days off is unheard of. It's impossible. Like I can't. I should be able to, but no. So I actually was joking there during that 3 week lockdown. Like everyone was watching movies and just like Netflixing and reading books, and I was like just working away. The only person I knew this side that was just working. And I was actually quite jealous of people who could just like lie on the couch and you don't even have to think what are your responsibilities for the rest of the day. Like, and we've got the kid, so it's bottles. And, well, you know that. So you also going through the same thing. It's medicine this time and bottle this time and sleep this time and everything has to be ready. And yes, and then they get sick and you know you're not going to probably get enough sleep tonight and tomorrow you just do the same again. So it's a lot of routine. I like routine, but some days it gets too much.
Yeah, and I'm
Just
reaching that point that you warned me about through Messenger a while ago. My little guy's crawling, moving a lot, standing on his own, and the next one is going to be walking. That'll be a little scary.
Yes. Luckily for us, Kaylee, she took a long time, not a long time, I think a year and 3 months before she started walking. But by then, her legs were quite strong. So the moment she started walking, she walked. It wasn't like 2 or 3 steps fall down and hit stuff everywhere. The moment she started walking, there she went. And I think she's fallen. She falls when she runs a bit. That's it. But her reflexes are quite well. She blocks every time. She hasn't really hurt herself yet. So, and if she
Does
does hit something, you just distract her, make a funny noise, show her something, and she starts laughing again. So that's fine.
do you and your wife read often to her?
um, we read every night. She's got this little kid's Bible that she grabs every time. And the one night she repeated one of the names, and we just kept laughing about that. But we don't like read the way I want to yet. I think we'll do that when probably from 2 years. Well, that's December. So, but that's going to be very important. And I'm a big fan of reading, and especially at night. It's even for myself. Like the reward is you can stay up a bit later if you're reading. Otherwise, you have to sleep. No watching TV and stuff. So that worked for me as a youngster, and I see my sister's kids as well. Like bedtime is, let's say, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, but if you read, you can stay like half an hour later awake. So
I'm
now we'll get to
I'm
do
going
that.
to steal that one. That's
Mm.
awesome. I didn't even think of that.
It's very nice. And I mean, then you can read for them, and it becomes a family thing. Who's that? I know Neil Gaiman does it. A lot of authors do it. That M. Night Shyamalan guy,
Oh, M. Night Shyamalan.
that's the one. Yeah, he wrote stories for his kids, and then, or he basically just made it up off the cuff, sitting in the bed, and then he went and he actually wrote the stuff down and got someone to draw pictures. I think that's the Lady in the Water movie that was born from that. And like
Oh, wow.
Stephen King got his kids to read books to him and record it like audiobooks. So he would listen to his kids reading books for him. But that was actually his way to get them to read books. And I think he paid them, I'm not sure, for every book that they turned into an audiobook for him. I'll probably do the same just
So,
to get a.
you're talking about Stephen King's kids when they were kids. He would pay them to read
I
not his
think
books, but
no, just any book. Like
okay.
I think I'm not sure, but I know they turned it into audiobooks for him. And now the nice thing is you can listen to it even today. I mean, he's got recordings of his 10, 12-year-old kids reading to him. I mean, that's something that's priceless. I'll definitely want some of that as well.
I never knew that. Brennan, did you know that?
I don't think I did. Seems like it worked out for them though, for
Mm.
Owen and
No,
Joe.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're kind of known, you know.
Yeah.
yeah, this, yeah,
So,
that's
Joe, is there? Because for me, my son's too young right now, but there's a few books that I definitely want to read to him, and they're all different levels of reading. Is there? I'd be happy to tell you what those are, but before I do that, if you're interested, are there any books that you have in your mind where you're like, I'd love to read this to my little girl?
I don't have them in my mind because I already wrote them down. I already, I already made a list of, and I keep adding to it because I'm going to forget. I've got a list of books that I want to either read to her or just make sure she gets one day,
Mhm.
or even movies that I can't wait to watch with her. Now, if you want to talk about a book and a movie, The Princess Bride, for instance, was one of my favorite books and movies. So we're definitely going to watch that one. Labyrinth, the movie with
Oh, yes,
David Bowie.
yes.
Books. Um, yes, there's a lot of great books. And the first book I read that I remember, well, the first English book, which is one of the books I grabbed from my sister, was It and Frankenstein. Frankenstein's a bit easier to read than It. So we'll probably do that. And Dracula as well. Dracula was one of the first, I think that's the biggest book I read as a youngster before I read It, if I remember correctly. And so, but it will be more of a fantasy, like Labyrinth, Princess Bride, those types of books, just to see how dark I can go before we reach her limit. I'm not going to push her to darker stuff. So whatever she likes, we'll do that.
I got one for you, man, and I suggested this to Brennan too. And it's written by. It's a movie. It's meant for. It's a family movie, but it's dark fantasy. Um, it was written by Neil Gaiman. I forget who else wrote it. It's called Mirror Mask, and it's based in the UK. This family, this daughter. I think she's like 13 or 14. Her parents run a circus, and long story short, she from my understanding, the way I took it, she fantasizes about this other land. And it's basically a modern day Wizard of Oz, if you will. It's just full of CGI, but it works for this movie.
Mhm.
I personally love watching it by myself. When my son's older and actually pays attention, I want to show that to him. And knowing that Neil Gaiman wrote it, he
Oh,
replied to one of my tweets, and I told him, I'm like, you, you've managed to be a beautiful soul. I said something like this. You managed to have a beautiful personality, stay humble, and be successful. I want
mm,
that.
definitely.
And
I'll
he
read
said,
anything. Yes, I'll
"Oh,
read and watch anything he works on. So
okay.
I can watch his speeches and stuff, like when he talks at universities and
Oh,
stuff. That
those are great."
I listen to anything that guy says. Have you ever listened to one of his audiobooks that he reads?
I haven't done
It's
that yet. I've listened to his commencement
mesmerizing.
speeches.
Yes. No, he can read anything on an audiobook and I'll listen to it. His voice is just amazing.
Yeah, I actually want to sign up for the master class that he talks about to learn how to write, and I don't care what he has to say either. I want to listen to him.
No, definitely.
The
Um,
um the for books, there's only three that come to mind. When I don't know if you've heard of Lex H. Jones, but he came out with this book through Sinister Horror Company, UK based publisher. It's called The Old One in the Sea. It's a
yes.
fictional. Have you happened
Mm,
to?
I looked at the book before it was published.
Oh, okay.
I know Lex's work. It's very good. I actually we kept saying about one day we need to do something together. I blurbed a book for him, one of his early books as well. So I looked at the old one in the sea, and unfortunately, I don't have the. Like I told him, like, man, I would love to do something like that with him, but I don't think I would have been able to uh, do the book justice in like marketing wise back then. Even now, I'd rather test it on something else first than go and screw up his book. So I'm glad everything worked out in the end for him, and it's a great book. I have the PDF, so I can't buy books from over there and ship them here. They always get lost. So
Oh
everything is
man.
PDFs or ebooks. Like I've lost some amazing books. I've lost signed books. I've lost
Ooh,
gifts that people send me. No, it's either gets lost, stolen, or they burn down someplace and the books get burned. So
that
that happens a
sucks.
lot.
That
Uh,
book's phenomenal, though. I mean, you don't have to love. You don't even have to be a fan of Lovecraft to appreciate that one.
exactly. Yeah.
So the other one is from an author from your neck of the woods, J.R. Tolkien. originally from South Africa. The Hobbit. That's more advanced reading, of course, but I would love to read him that and the Chronicles of Narnia series.
Yeah, exactly. I can't wait to watch. I told my wife the other day, can't wait to watch Lord of the Rings, all three movies with this one. I wonder how old she has to be before we can do that. She just laughs. But yeah, Tolkien was born actually here in Bloemfontein where I live, um, something like 3 or 4 kilometers away. There is a lot of talk about which house exactly, uh, because a lot of the guest houses want to say, no, it was this our house, so that people can stay there. Um, but it is in this area, and I believe they moved away when he was 2 years old. They went back to England,
Right.
somewhere there.
But he's still
Also,
South African.
yeah. Also, during the war, there was another author who was a journalist here. Man, I suck at names. Uh, Arthur, no, it wasn't Doyle. Ugh, if I'll probably remember tomorrow. But so a lot of authors have come this way, stayed a few years, or they were born here and they moved away again. Some of my favorite authors. Yeah. I love authors from those eras.
Yeah, they're interested
Yes.
for sure. And as far as the Lord of the Rings trilogy movie goes, I fell in love when I saw the trailer back in like 2001. So I would have been 12 then. I was like, what is this? I need it in my life. And it's done so many wonders. If it wasn't for that, I don't think Game of Thrones, the show, would have been a thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Brennan, do you have any books or have you read any books to your kids that you were like, I gotta read my kid this?
I have a wish list, and it actually lines up a lot with some of the things we've already talked about. But just the way my kids operate, and they're a little bit older, they're 7 and 10. The way they operate is if the movie holds their attention, then they might be into the book. If the movie doesn't hold their attention, there is no chance. And I'll give you an example. They absolutely adore the Narnia movies. Even the older, I don't know if you've ever seen the like
The
cheapo
BBC
BBC.
one?
Yes, yeah, they have those on DVD and they love them.
Right.
They're horrifying. Like the the practical effect nature of them. And right now my younger one, he is hyperlexic, which basically means that he reads above his level by a pretty wide amount. Right now, he's going through those books, and he does not want me to read to him. Not the They only like me to read shorter stuff to them, so he's working through those. We tried. They love the Harry Potter movies. We tried those. Not not a fan of the books, and they don't really care about the Lord of the Rings movies. I don't think the books would stand a chance at this point, or the Hobbit. So like we're working towards it.
So Joe, I'm curious, man. What do you see for the future of Crystal Lake Publishing?
I'm now at that stage of the year where I start making plans. Not start making plans, I've already had plans for next year, but now I have to decide what am I definitely going to do so I can put the steps into motion. And we are looking at like a poetry division because I love dark poetry, but and there's a lot of authors out there, but not a lot of opportunities for them. Like the HWA has a nice that anthology they have every year, um, but I don't know. I haven't figured out exactly how to make it like give it a unique spin, exactly how to do it. But I'll need a few bigger poets involved and somehow showcase the lesser known ones and maybe put in some of their stuff online and in books. I mean, imagine every Crystal Lake book starting with a poem by a younger poet. If maybe something that fits the theme of the book, I don't know. So I'll figure that out. And because at the end of every year we have like a small fundraiser to basically just fund whatever weird idea I have for next year, because it's difficult to fund a new project with the company's current cash flow, because you risk a lot. I mean, that money is supposed to go to new covers and new books and stuff. So if it flops, then you've got a big problem with the whole year. So we'll see what I'm gonna do, how much it's gonna cost, and just try and raise like $1 or $2 to help that. But I don't know. I'm so busy with other stuff now that I keep pushing it back, but I have to eventually figure something out. But it has to be different. I mean, I'm not going to copy what others have already done. Because
Yeah,
poetry is a big market, but I'm not going to let that like keep me away because it is really cool and I love it. And I
I'm
don't
just
want
gonna
to.
throw I'm just gonna throw a name out there, John Edward Lawson, man. You want to talk about a unique spin on poetry? That's one name I would throw out there. I'd say Stephanie Wadovich, but you already work with her. I
Yeah,
think.
I talked to her about this as well. And if she wasn't so busy, she's very busy, I would have
Yeah.
I would have already spoken to her and said like, yes, let's do something. What do you think is going to work? Because I know, I mean, even at her work now, she teaches at, I believe, a university, and now with all the lockdowns and stuff and school that's all weird and everything, they've got a hectic schedule now for the rest of the year to get like to try and fit in all the work. So I don't want to burden her with even more stuff, but I will most likely need her input. I mean, she is my main person when I talk about poetry. And Alessandro Menzetti in Italy, but he also runs his own press, so I know he's busy.
Hmm.
But these are the people that I'll at least have to speak to and see, like, what is the need out there, and for the poets and the readers, and see where we can come up with something, at least.
Yeah, for sure. And two other names, just gonna throw them out there: Sarah Tantlinger and Christina Singh. I mean, they're pretty big names. I wish I could think of more on the top of my head, but I'm not that in tune with poetry. But I did read Stephanie's last year, the Apocalyptic Mannequin.
Yeah,
That was great.
that's
That was
that's
awesome.
very, no, really.
Brennan, do you have any final questions for Joe?
No, I would definitely echo you throwing out John Edward Lawson though, because of all the presses I can think of, Raw Dog Screaming, which he co-runs, is definitely doing more with bizarro poetry, dark poetry, straight out horror poetry than pretty much anyone else that I can think of off the top of my head. But that's one press out of the many, many, many that are doing horror fiction. There's definitely a market for it.
See, that's the thing. Like, if people eventually know that if they're looking for poetry, these are the places that you can go to, then I think you might find it financially viable. But for now, I've done one poetry book a year since we started, and although a lot of them have won awards, I think only two of them have been like financially like worth the investment. It doesn't cost a lot like an anthology, but I mean, it's a very small market, and a lot of people wait for the book to go on sale anyway. So with poetry, you normally might just stick to the asking price, because otherwise people are just going to buy it for 99 cents and they're never going to buy, you're not going to sell it at full price. So we'll rather just stick to that. I know the bulk pricing system is always something the small press owners are talking about. Are
Uh,
we asking too much or too little? Should you go on sale, or should you launch at 99 cents? It's always an ongoing debate.
that does that 100% sounds like a full-time job. I don't
Yeah,
know how you balanced it, man.
yeah, I'm looking for that magic balance, but I'm not there yet. No, not even close. Yes, sir.
Um, Joe, is there anything that you would like to make sure people know? Or this comes out next Monday, which would be what, August 3rd. So is there any openings that you want people aware of, open submissions or anything?
We'll be closed by then for the novels and novellas. By then, we should start with this month's. The flash fiction theme for this month is most like camp horror and stories by the lake, etc. So that should start around the third. I think, yeah, on Monday. Yeah, the first story will be posted. Um, I hope I don't have anything else coming for the rest of this year other than just book launches, because I don't know where I'm going to fit it in. The newest thing that I have done is because of the whole lockdown thing, I started talking about guys about just people need to laugh and just forget about stuff. Is we started that um, dark humor, what I call it, a newspaper periodical, whatever, Coffee Beans and Conquest, which is the weirdest name ever, but it just tells you just what weird kind of stuff we do there. But that's the newest thing that we've done, and we've got 5 authors who are now our journalists, and they write the weirdest, funniest articles, jokes, interviews, book reviews, some real books, some made-up books, and every second day we just post it like it's a news article. And uh, the followers that we do have say it's very cool with their morning coffee. So like reading a newspaper, but for people with ours, like darker humor, especially the horror writers. I mean, we like that kind of stuff.
For sure.
But
Now,
it's also on Patreon. It's also subscription based.
okay.
But we have a Twitter page where we can put like a bunch of just jokes and share stuff, and you don't have to pay for that, at least. So
Cool. So everybody, just listen up for a minute because we got some exciting news. A reminder about Mary San Giovanni's Buzz Book Expo. Brendan, take it away, sir.
Yeah, just before we wrap it up, I want to remind readers, book reviewers, podcasters, librarians, booksellers, and lovers of all great scary books that Buzz Book Expo 2020, it's just around the corner. Buzz Book Expo is a live streaming event in which publishers will be announcing all of the great new horror fiction releases they have to offer through the coming year. There's going to be interviews, Q&As, presentations, book cover reveals, and more from all of your favorite horror publishers, and it's all for free. That's important, all for free. Spend 2 days immersed in exciting book talk from publishers and authors alike, and it takes place from August 22nd to 23rd. All information, including links to the expo, can be found at Sangi, that's SANGI, wordpress.com/buzz-book-expo-2020. We hope to see you there. Joe,
sir.
Oh, sorry. I'm gonna steal your spotlight.
Go for it.
Joe, where can people follow you and Crystal Lake online?
Facebook, just Crystal Lake Publishing, Twitter, Crystal Lake Pub, Instagram, I believe it's also just Crystal Lake Pub. I used to have a Twitter account for myself, but I should actually deactivate that thing. I haven't checked it in years. And the website, I had a deal with a guy for a new website during the lockdown. It was very difficult to build this thing because I couldn't go to him. So we had to, on the phone, I had to say, this is what I want. I'll send you examples. And when we were actually living in the same town, and that fell through because of his health issues. I can't go into too much there, but it's a major issue. So I had to look for a new guy. So we would have launched the website now already, but the old one is still there. I'm not 100% happy with it, but we still have a website, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I tried out a few other places, but I mean, the rule is if you can't commit, don't even start, because it's not going to be worth it. And I cannot commit to anything else right now. And I mean, Twitter and Facebook is like, if you have that, and Instagram, then you will at least get some people on one of them. So most people on one of them.
It's exhausting. I can only commit to the one, so.
Yeah, really, it's exhausting because even on Facebook, I've got my profile, I've got my page, I've got the Crystal Lake page, then there's the coffee page one, there's that Stillwater Bay series on Patreon, that one has a page. Some of the series and books have pages, but at least I don't have to go there a lot. But just going through the notifications every day and emails, that's like, and by the time you're done with that, you think, yes, I've already done a lot of work, and you've actually done nothing. Now you actually only start working, and then the replies start coming in. And sometimes you just have to go offline, just get some work done.
That's crazy. Joe, thank
Yes.
you so much for giving us your time. Really appreciate it. It means a lot to us.
Anytime. It's better than sleeping. So.
And it's
By a little bit.
yeah, I mean it's almost 11 o'clock there, right?
That's 10 to
It's
12.
almost it's almost 12.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost 6
We'll
o'clock
let
here.
you go, man.
I haven't been awake this late, probably in like 3 or 4 weeks. Like even my doctor said, like really go to bed earlier, uh, try and get some sleep, and like after I'm like completely healed up and stuff, we'll see why I'm so like just plain tired and confused lately. But I'm blaming lack of sleep, so and too
You
much
can
work.
you can totally hate us if you feel like hell tomorrow morning.
Yeah, fingers crossed everything goes smoothly tonight because most nights the baby is fine. You'll wake up like 2 or 3 times a night, but some nights she wakes up and then she just sits up. And then it takes about 2 or 3 hours before she falls asleep again. So, and it's extremely boring because you can't come to the TV or anything. You can't talk to them, you can't play with them, or they get used to it and they think, hey, this is nice. Let's wake up every night. So it's very boring. Just sit there for 2 hours and wait for her to fall asleep. Yes.
Fingers crossed, man.
Yeah, so
Joe,
hopefully
Joe,
everything
have a
goes
good
well.
night, brother.
Okay, thanks guys. You too.
Thank you.
That was fun.
All right.
Okay,
See ya.
bye.